Hello everybody, happy Saturday. We are officially 99 days out from the 2025 New York City Marathon, and I know a lot of people have their training for the race pretty well underway, and so I wanted to share some tips for those practicing for the marathon. I'm coaching a handful of athletes for this race, and so I put together a little practice guide for those that I'm coaching, and I wanted to share some parts of that practice guide. I'm not going to share the whole thing, but I'm going to share a couple of practice routes that are kind of geared for people in the New York City area who may be training. Okay, so basically this is kind of in order of where you'll encounter these portions on the race route. And so starting off in Staten Island, the biggest elevation gain of the entire race is going to be on the Verrazano Bridge. And while you're not able to practice that bridge in training, a good alternative to the Verrazano is actually going over to the Williamsburg Bridge. So you can find all of these segments on Strava, but basically the Williamsburg Bridge has about the same elevation grade as the Verrazano does. It is a little bit shorter, but it is a great practice route. Okay, so the next borough that you'll encounter is Brooklyn, which is probably the easiest and the flattest part of the whole course. So nothing super particular to practice there. There is a hill at between miles 8 and 9. And then around the halfway point, you're going to cross the Pulaski Bridge, and that will take you from Brooklyn into Queens. And so a good route that I like to practice to kind of simulate the harder parts of the Brooklyn course, and this actually goes through the Queens piece as well, is going from mile 8 to mile 17-ish through the end of mile 16, call it. So basically from that first noticeable hill in Brooklyn, across the Pulaski Bridge, then across the Queensboro Bridge, which is notoriously hilly. And so that will get you 3 big hills in one, call it like 8-mile run, which you can kind of combine into your long run. If you want a shorter route, you can a 3 or 4 mile run if you just do the stretch, so you could kind of go do an out and back and make it 8 miles. But I do think both of these bridges are really important. The Pulaski, a lot of people kind of skip over it, but it is a sizable incline, and this hits at the halfway point. And so why I think this point is really important is that if you don't feel confident and feel good coming across this bridge, it definitely takes a blow to your confidence, because you're like, okay, how am I supposed to run another half a marathon? And the Queensboro Bridge is just a very notorious part of the marathon where everyone, has an opinion on it, and a lot of people think it's the hardest part of the whole race. But the good news is now we have the new pedestrian path, and so it's much easier to go across this bridge. So again, just really highly recommend practicing this stretch, whether it be on long runs or even easy runs. Okay, so moving on, entering Manhattan, you will then do the First Avenue stretch, which is definitely some rolling hills. It is net downhill, and so I think it's a good idea to practice this stretch if you might live on the Upper East Side. However, if you're not in the area, you probably don't need to do anything too crazy to prepare for this, other than just making sure that you're practicing rolling hills. But definitely recommend that everyone practice the last 10 miles of the race course at least once. The week before the marathon, there will be plenty of opportunities to practice the last 10. A bunch of run clubs and running stores do this route, and so that would cover the First Avenue stretch. So just gonna hop into that route here now. You can see going up First Avenue into the Bronx, that stretch is pretty flat. The bridges into the Bronx are not that crazy. Then you come down through Harlem into down Fifth Avenue and into Central Park. So I did want to talk a little bit about this Manhattan Part 2 that you see here. So this Fifth Avenue stretch, in my opinion, is definitely the toughest part of the whole race. This is the Fifth Avenue stretch on the east side of Central Park. So when you enter from the Bronx, at first it's not so bad, but once you get to around 110th, that Fifth Avenue stretch turns into this very gradual incline that you can't really see when you're running. So you're like, why does this feel so hard? A couple reasons why it feels so hard. You're 22 miles into a marathon, which is always going to feel hard. But other than that, it is about 100 feet of elevation gain in a single mile, which is pretty crazy, pretty drastically uphill. This is the segment here, but basically you'll want to practice this, and not only will you want to practice this, but I think it's really important to strategically put this stretch at the end of your long runs, because if you're just doing a normal, call it like 4 or 5 mile easy run, you're not going to really notice this uphill stretch. But if you put this at the end of an 18-mile long run, you will notice it, and your body will be able to kind of adapt for it and prepare for it when you hit the stretch in the marathon. And then you'll have a stretch in Central Park, which in my opinion is not so bad. It's actually an easier stretch of Central Park. But I think if you're able to practice this, it's a good idea to run this portion of Central Park. So it's basically you'll go down Fifth Avenue, enter the park at the Engineers Gate, and then go south in the clockwise direction. And then you'll cut out at Central Park South, which is actually an uphill portion for about, it's less than half a mile, but it feels a little pesky in the marathon. And then you'll re-enter and end right around Tavern on the Green, which also is uphill. And so the more you practice this finishing stretch, the more confident you'll feel when you re-enter Manhattan for the second time. So hopefully this was helpful. Like I said, you should be able to find most of these routes on Strava. Obviously the New York Marathon route is on there, and you can kind of practice bits and pieces, but these are the pieces that I would recommend trying. So definitely let me know if you have any questions about this, or if you need any coaching help for the New York City Marathon, also available for that. Or if you have just any New York Marathon questions, definitely let me know. But good luck with your training, and looking forward to seeing all of you out there on November 2nd.